Hi, a very good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are, and thank you so much for coming to our virtual networking event, an official side event at the sidelines of VivaTech, one of the key startup conferences in France. Today, for our program, we'll be starting off with a short address by our ambassador to France, His Excellency Zainul Mantaha. And then we'll follow up with a presentation on the exciting program that will bring stronger links between France and Singapore by Bpifrance, followed by an interesting panel on how we can re-enhance i4.0 startup corporate partnerships in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Please feel free to ask questions during the session. And of course, what's the most exciting that comes after that will be the networking session, where you have different organizations across Singapore and investors, corporates will be at their virtual tables waiting to speak and network with you. So just to go through a bit of the administration part, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So don't forget to ask your questions using the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of the event. And throughout the session, you're welcome to include questions. And don't forget to go to the networking session right after the panel. And if you're not speaking, please kindly turn off your microphone so that we can have a positive experience for everyone. Last but not least, to move from one table to another, just double-click on the table of your choice, and you will see the tables automatically appear after the panel itself. So let me just give me a second while I pull out the of a last-minute issue, but he has recorded a short message summarizing the key advantages and collaborations between France and Singapore. So without further ado, he's actually watching from afar, but he cannot connect with us today. But just give me a sec.
Do you want me to begin?
No. I just wanted to play a short video for
okay.
Our president. Just give me a second for that. It's supposed to be on the screen. I don't know why it's not. Okay. Okay, a second.
A very good morning to all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. My name is Zainul Mantaha, and welcome to the Singapore Digital Booth, which is set up in conjunction with VivaTech 2021. I am indeed honored to bear witness to the expansion of France-Singapore collaboration in the innovation and technology sector over the last few years, especially following the 2017 Joint Declaration on Innovation and the 2018 France-Singapore Year Innovation. The participation of startups in this important pillar of the strategic partnership between France and Singapore is of special importance to me. There has indeed been much progress. I have had the opportunity to review efforts to help French and Singapore startups scale up by leveraging our respective startup ecosystems with Director of La French Tech, Ms. Kat Bollinger. The joint initiatives and programs launched by the Economic Development Board, Enterprise Singapore and SGInnovate on the Singapore side, and La French Tech, Bpifrance and Bpifrance on the French side, have created a pipeline to facilitate startups from one country scale up in the other. Notably, Singapore is host to 17 of the French Tech 120 Next 40 companies today. Amongst them are Sigfox in the IoT sector, Artempo in cybersecurity, and Voodoo in the mobile video game sector. And more Singapore startups are also scaling up in France, such as H3 Dynamics, Manifold, who's involved in digital banking services, and Datena, involved in the AI and data privacy sector. But it is certainly not the time to rest on our laurels. We need to inject more momentum even further. It is for that reason that I am excited about our event this morning, held on the eve of VivaTech 2021. The focus on enhancing startup corporate industry 4.0 partnerships in Singapore and Southeast Asia is particularly appropriate. There are huge opportunities for French and other international startups as Singapore powers ahead in our efforts to help manufacturers transition to Industry 4.0. By adopting the right technology to increase automation, connectivity, and intelligence, by transforming manufacturing processes to achieve vertical integration of operations, horizontal integration of supply chains, and integrated product lifecycle. And finally, by transforming organizations to enhance talent readiness and improve structure and management. The speakers after me will give you more details of Singapore's strategy to transform manufacturing and highlight opportunities for startups with relevant innovative products to partner manufacturing enterprises to help them in their transformation journey. I am confident that there are many amongst you who will benefit from such partnerships. One example I'm happy to highlight is H2 Dynamics' partnership with JTC, Singapore's lead agency for planning and development of industrial infrastructure. In 2016, an H3 Dynamics subsidiary called H3Zoom.ai, which specializes in telerobotic solutions and AI services, took part in JTC's Open Innovation Core. This led to a collaboration with JTC to launch an AI-powered solution known as H3Zoom.ai Facade Inspector. Today, H3Zoom.ai has used drones to inspect over 200 buildings in Singapore, including over 160 JTC properties. And it is also working on projects in Brazil and is in talks to expand into Indonesia, Australia, Hong Kong, and Japan. My very best wishes to our good friends at H2 Dynamics for their continued success. Now, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, before I end my brief remarks this morning, let me take this opportunity to thank my friends and colleagues from the Paris office of the Singapore Economic Development Board, as well as colleagues from SGInnovate and the Singapore Global Network for making this virtual networking event possible. And to all of you who have tuned in, thank you once again. I hope that you will find this event useful and wish you a very fruitful morning ahead. Bon séance. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind attention. We will be handing it over now to Noven from Bpifrance, who will be sharing a bit on this exciting program to bring our ecosystems in France. Share your slides now.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I lost you for a second. Wait.
Over to you.
Do the big picture or the small one?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So thank you. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for the invitation, because so I'm Nolwenn Simona. I'm working for the innovative department at Bpifrance, which is the French public investment bank. And I am in charge of the collaborative, the joint program we have with Singapore, and the one mentioned by our ambassador. And so actually today is the launch of our third call. So I'm very glad to be here and to have a word about it. Basically, in a few words, but you already learned a bit about it right before, the Joint Innovation Program we launched as very, the main goal is for you, both on French and Singaporean side, to help you accelerate your international growth through those kind of collaborative tech partnerships. And actually, our idea is really for you to be helped, because it's kind of complicated to arrive on a new market with new rules, with new culture, with a very French or Singaporean but national product or service, and to arrive and to maybe do not match exactly what the market is waiting for. And actually, this kind of joint innovation program is for you the possibility to target market and to find a local partner and collaborate with him to co-adapt or co-develop something new to address a new market. And it will be easier for you, because actually you will arrive on a new market, but you will arrive with a product or a service kind of really adapted to it, because you co-developed it with a local partner. And basically most of the time the technological partner for your joint innovation program is begin afterwards a commercial partner. So it is ready for you to accelerate your growth and to be easier to arrive on new markets. So how is it working in a nutshell? Actually, we need, of course, at least one company on both sides, so one in France and one in Singapore. And the eligible beneficiaries are quite open. In France, it's up to 2,000 employees, but it has to be an enterprise company. And on enterprise Singapore side and Singaporean side, of course, Singaporean companies. And one specific attention, of more than 30% of your capital owned by, so directly or indirectly, by Singaporeans. The eligible costs, as I mentioned, we are really on the R&D collaboration, which means that it will be about research, development, or the test you could have, but once the final product is finished, we actually won't fund you on the industrialized or commercialization part. But that does not mean that we have nothing for you, actually, because this program is really on the R&D collaboration. But of course, if you need help afterwards, we have plenty of other fundings and other programs if you need help for the commercialization. About the funding amount, on French side, the grant, the subvention, sorry, will be most of the time on repayable advances, up to 3 million euros and up to 65% of your costs. On the Singaporean side, it will be more about a grant up to 70% of your costs. The maximum of the duration of the collaborative R&D is 2 to 3 years, which means that actually we're targeting the 2 years, but on French side, we could have 3 years. And the objective, as you understood, is really to be really near to the market. So actually, after these 2-3 years, we need you to go on the market, and we can help you, of course, afterwards, but that's the main objective. Maybe only one point, and after that, we will continue with the roundtable. If you need help, because it's kind of complicated on French side to find a partner, to organize your R&D project, to negotiate the consortium, or to just whatever you could need actually to build the project before the application, we can help you by, so you're hiring an expert, a consultant, and actually Bpifrance is taking half of the price to help you conduct this, this partnership with a Singaporean company. So if you need anything, you have here the website where you can actually apply, but also have all information. And if you have any other information, you have the possibility to write us, and that's actually the first steps you need, so we can discuss on one-to-one meeting your precise project. So you have here our contact, you have here the website on our side, and the call deadline is at the very end of the year, so you have 6 months to find your partners and build a marvelous collaborative project.
Thank you, Noven, for this. I think it's a very nice way to kickstart a networking event, because you know that not only if you hopefully able to find new partners through this platform, you can also have funding from both the French and Singaporean side. If you're not a French company, it's fine. Just reach out to EDB and we can always have a conversation on what other funding programs are out there for you. But thanks so much again, Noven, for your great sharing. From the French Chamber of Commerce of Singapore. She has lived in Singapore for many years and has lots of experience helping a lot of companies expand and grow their operations in Singapore and Southeast Asia. So we're very happy to have Aude, who is our moderator for our next panel on how we can enhance startup corporate collaborations in the space of Industry 4.0. So without further ado, over to you, Aude. Very happy to have you here this morning or afternoon with us.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Thank you to all of you. So good morning, France and Europe, and good afternoon to those who connect from Singapore and Asia. So I'm Aude Simon, Head of Business Development at the French Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. Just a very few words about us. So we are a multi-service provider. We aim to support our members and companies based in France to expand in Singapore and in Southeast Asia. I'm very delighted to welcome you on our and our experts today, to this panel discussion dedicated to corporate startup partnerships in the field of Industry 4.0. So before we hear our speakers share personal stories and concrete tips, please allow me to give you a little bit of context here. So Southeast Asia has remained a bright spot despite the COVID-19 induced global recession, with 4.5% real GDP growth expected in 2021. The economic bloc is also slated to become the fourth largest economy by 2030, and is both an integrated market and production base for global manufacturers. So Singapore is an advanced manufacturing hub in Southeast Asia, with the public and private sectors jointly driving Industry 4.0 initiatives like the Smart Industry Readiness Index, known as SIRI, recognized by the World Economic Forum as an international standard for Industry 4.0 transformation. SIRI helps companies to look at process, technology, and organization to start, scale, and sustain their manufacturing transformation journeys. Yet, many manufacturing corporates in Southeast Asia continue to face challenges with Industry 4.0 adoption, and are keen to partner in innovative startups to accelerate their Industry 4.0 plans. So SGInnovate, Singapore Economic Development Board, and Singapore Global Network are delighted to host an esteemed panel of corporates, investors, public agencies, and scale-ups who are industry leaders and driving key Industry 4.0 initiatives in their respective sectors. So to discuss about this today, we have the chance to have with us Franck Siegel. He's the Deputy CEO of Sigfox. Sigfox is a global communications service provider for the IoT. Tianhui Tong, known as HH, the Executive Director Investments at SGInnovate, whose focus is to help entrepreneurial scientists build deep tech startups. Our third expert today is Lalitha Bhaskara. She is the Vice President of SAP.io Foundries APAC, Japan, and China, which actually is SAP Startup Accelerator. Paul Ng, Managing Partner Investments at EDBI. EDBI is the dedicated corporate investment arm of the Economic Development Board and a global investor in select high-growth technology sectors. And last but not least, Surbhi Singh, CEO and co-founder of Firevisor. Firevisor provides AI-powered software platform that understands manufacturing data to reduce the cost of product failure. Just before we start, I would like to gently remind you, dear attendees, that you can ask your questions during the panel using the Q&A box, and I will do my best to address them to our experts at the end of our session. So let's now hear our speakers. To all of you, dear panelists, the world is a shift in the interest in building a more resilient and sustainable economy and society after the COVID-19 pandemic. So what might be some of the growth opportunities in Industry 4.0 out there that both startups and corporates are looking to capture?
I'll take this one, or if I may.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you might hear me using one sentence very often during this panel, because I believe that Industry 4.0 opportunities laid in one sentence: anticipation with global and cross-business adaptability and resilience. And let me say a few words on that. Anticipation, because we live in a world that needs to know what the next step is. So we need predictive data. Global, we live in a global world. This panel is the proof of it. And every complexity in our world is about global logistics, global production. Vaccine is developed in a country, then produced in another, and injected in another. So we need global and cross-business data. Why cross-business? Because even though it might be in one domain, you need financial institute, you need a research institute to complement. So it's all about cross-business matters. Adaptability, the world is changing at the speed of light. So we need a proactive data. And resilience, because we are immediately unsatisfied as soon as something goes down, right? And we want everything now, but in a reliable manner, and we need reliable data. So data is the key word here. And it's a massive opportunity for Industry 4.0, massive need. And we believe at Sigfox that Internet of Things, IoT, is a key to capture data and to provide the right information to any type of businesses, from supply chain, manufacturers, and so on and so forth. So why startups are key in those things? Because we've got hundreds, if not millions, of use cases, from trolley tracking, from LP gas monitoring, from home security alarming, and there will be multiple, very niche, very focused, very innovative requirements, and a company on its own cannot sustain that, cannot support that. So company needs to surround itself by an ecosystem of partners, and partners who are agile, innovative, focused. That's the definition of a startup. So that's why we believe at Sigfox that Industry 4.0 is massive opportunity for startups and the economy of data. That's what I believe.
Yeah. Can I add to that, Simon? I think that was really a great start to what you said. Excellent, thank you. And whatever I'll be sharing is in addition to what it is, because it's not neither or, it's an and that each of us will be talking here. Absolutely, I probably will use similar 3 words, which is resilient, agility, and flexibility. And from an SAP standpoint, as how we help companies run better, and in terms of connected business processes of enterprises from start to finish. I think it's definitely data, but data that's also plugging in with intelligent workflows. And that's where the connected business process comes into picture. We have seen, though, during COVID, entire of last year and potentially post-COVID, that resilient supply chain is something every company would need to look at, and moving away from what was very operational and improving working capital or single sourcing kind of strategies that companies looked at to much more of a very agile and flexible kind of supply chains, and also embed towards the intelligent workflows, from everything from faster design to production to faster to market. And we've seen how, not only from the pharma companies and how they would get to those jabs into the citizens, but also looking at how hospitals were managing, from supplies to even, what we saw in India in the last couple of months, people sharing the same oxygen cylinders with innovative kind of coming up and helping humanity. So, and including lockdown in Singapore, and, where we depend a lot on the exports. They've seen that resilient supply chains where they're agile and where you could bring in that flexibility was key. Where we see startups helping us is with these intelligent workflows. We see startups who potentially can bring new data or leverage the data that already customers have, or the big brands have, and create a very new, meaningful value for them. So it's just an extension of how data can be used to add or new data, or use that to create new workflows, is something very key to whatever we are doing as a part of Industry 4.0.
Thank you, Laisa. Paul, maybe?
Yeah, I'll be happy to add on. Well, I think COVID was a wake-up call for those who are not on Industry 4.0 yet at scale. So I think it's reasonable to expect acceleration of its adoption, and more importantly, its underlying enabling technologies moving forward. Just adding on to what Frank said, on industrial IoT, we think it's a growth area as well, but at least from an investor standpoint, it feels somewhat competitive. At EDBI, we like investing in picks and shovels, and the opportunity that we are looking at, and I would like to highlight in IoT, is really the future of computing, which is needed to support edge computing, or simply smarter end devices. So one of our plays for this, is in Envic Micro, based in Austin, Texas. So it's ultra low power electronics, consumes power 1/10 that of its competitors. And this not only extends the battery life of sensors, but also enables edge computing for use cases that need smarter sensors to be on batteries. So use cases could be in preventive maintenance, in vibration sensing, for example, inventory management. Adding on to as well what I guess Latisha mentioned as well, we totally agree. There's a big opportunity for companies diversifying their supply bases, right? I mean, global supply chains were already under pressure from the US-China trade tensions, and then you have the pandemic. So this unleashes a whole various plays you can have in manufacturing, in logistics, warehousing, and retail. One of our bets in this area is a company called Bright Machines, based in the US. It provides a software-defined full-stack factory as a service for companies looking to create a more distributed or even just to reshore production back to where they are. So today, Bright Machines has over 50 micro factories producing a wide range of products, from consumer goods, medicine devices, EVs, as well as data center equipment. Thanks for this.
Okay, so Owen, I think I'm just going to sort of follow through on what Paul said, and perhaps my answer is going to be framed more within the context of what we do at SGInnovate. We do a lot of, we invest a lot in very early stage emerging technologies. So that also means that we sort of need to be a little bit like one cycle ahead of the curve. So totally agree with what Paul said, but we look at broader trends as well. Things like, other than what Frank and Lalita mentioned, we look at things like customization. The demand is driven by customization. It's driven by availability. But more importantly, I think now a lot of people are talking about sustainability. And it's quite apt that this VivaTech is held in Paris, and the Paris Accord sort of defines a lot of the investments that we make, because obviously sustainability is becoming one of the key areas that we have got to look at before we put our money down. So the two things that we do invest in that we think are going to be important in the next few years. One, I think Lalita mentioned, additive manufacturing. A lot of false dawns there, but I think it's starting to come into its own now, and there's a lot more applications. The second thing is to expand a bit on what Paul has said. We are very bullish on semiconductors and photonics. We believe that AI chips, low-powered chips to power the processing of all the mountains of data that IoT is going to generate, I think it's going to be critical. So that not only do you power less to get the same output, but you also generate less heat, so that you don't have so many cooling systems. So we are bullish on that, and then as to a certain extent, a long shot, we are also investors in quantum technology, very early stage. I think that's still a long way to go, but that's taking the semiconductor theory to its natural extension. So I think these are the key areas that we are bullish about.
Thank you, HH. Sir B, would you like to maybe?
Sure. I'll quickly chime in with the startup perspective on this. So first, going back to, I guess, the impact of COVID on Industry 4.0 implementation. What we see a lot is, I guess you guys are aware, there are typically these change managers inside companies, which are sort of designated for implementing Industry 4.0 projects and so forth, right? For us, the biggest change manager has been COVID. So COVID has actually sort of, really pushed companies in the direction of not only just thinking about implementing, or, sort of not only thinking about it from an anticipation perspective that, I should do it because others are doing it too, and probably because I might miss out on something. Now it's an absolute need. They really are finding it sort of difficult to operate without it, especially post-COVID. So, I mean, now it's a very urgent need for these companies. And second thing is what Frank mentioned, and Leta also touched on a little bit, is the fact that it's a very collaborative approach in the sense that no one startup or I would go to say no one big company can actually sort of come in and implement everything, because manufacturing is so distributed in terms of the systems, in terms of the way the factory floor operates. So it's kind of a very, very collaborative approach. So, you know, somebody who's like Sigfox enabling IoT is an ecosystem enabler for someone who's like Firevisor, and then SAP comes in who's like, you know, who has a whole bunch of companies implementing different kinds of solutions. So all of them sort of have to work together and faster. So I see more and more of that happening. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on, I guess, the impact of COVID and how we, you know, see Industry 4.0 implementation moving forward.
Thank you to all of you. Many ideas here. Frank, you were previously mentioning about talking about data and automation in driving Industry 4.0 practices. Would you suggest wireless communications being one of the main building blocks to kick off a company's journey to digitalization? And why and how does it compare to other functions like automation and AI?
Well, that's a big topic. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, what's needed for all markets, all companies, it's information. Information, it's a translated data into meaningful piece of information for the companies to do what they've got to do. But the data needs to be captured from somewhere. Until now, data was coming from our mobile phone, speaking, but in order to evolve in the agile world that we are in, we need data from the objects themselves. So, and to capture the data, not all objects are connected. You know, plenty of objects for supply chain. When you track a beer keg or when you monitor an LP gas, they are not connected devices and they are moving around all around. So wireless is absolutely key to capture the data from those devices that are moving everywhere. But I wanted to react on the point that sustainability was mentioned. Sustainability is key in everything we need to think of. Us, human being, we grew up with the concept of who can do more can do less. But when you adapt and use that concept, then you waste a lot of things. And sustainability is outside that concept, right? We need to do the just enough. We need to do the just enough for what's required for the value to the business. What I mean is that in wireless, the wireless market is wide. There is the 5G hype right now going on everywhere in the planet, and 5G will certainly deliver value for high-speed data, real-time, low latency for kids to play on their mobile phone in the tube, or to connect video surveillance cameras. Definitely the right thing, the right size for things. But if we look at sustainability, using 5G to track a trolley, to track a beer keg, to track a parcel or a pallet, then it's a waste of energy, a waste of costs. It's not going to be sustainable at all, and the battery will die very quickly because it consumes a lot of power. So that's why we at Sigfox created the 0G, what we call the 0G, which is just the opposite of the 5G, just enough. With 12 bytes, a 12-byte message, that's far enough to track a trolley, to track a parcel, and that consumes very little energy, and it's a very little cost. So we've got the concept of just enough for your purpose. And I think whatever wireless solution we need to think of, we need to think about the just enough. And there will be space for every wireless solution, and very often it will be a combo of wireless solution that will provide the right data, a combo of Sigfox plus BLE, Bluetooth, or Wi-Fi, or another one, depending on the use case of the customer. And that's where, coming back on the startup things, there are so many use cases that it's impossible for a large corporate to tackle those use cases alone. So ecosystem of of startups and partners are critical. And then to like that point and to all the panelists' points earlier on, data is just one piece of the puzzle of Industry 4.0. Data alone doesn't mean anything if it's not translating into meaningful information, and this meaningful information is not generating automation. So that's where AI and automation are key, because they use the data collected thanks to IoT, they transform it into processes, into automation, into system that make companies and hopefully our planet better.
Thank you, Frank. From a wider point of view, and according to all of you, how can Singapore and regional or global partners work together to capture such growth opportunities that we were talking about before, and help each other achieve a more resilient and sustainable future? What would you say? Larissa, maybe? Would you like to start? Yeah, sure.
Oh yes, that's actually an excellent question, and I think an excellent thought point also to look at from all the journey that we had with SAP.io here, almost coming now 2+ years, and having worked with many startups in Tokyo, Singapore, Bangalore, as well as in China, and worldwide. I think Singapore represents a very, very unique major hub for SAP. Likewise for SAP customers and also the startups. And let me explain each of these components and how, from an SAP standpoint, we are triangulating this. For SAP, Singapore is our regional headquarters, which is all our talent in terms of domain expertise in industries, in line of business solutions, in our technology. We have representation here, which is serving the market units that we operate across Asia Pacific and Japan. It's just the proximity of travel because we are the headquarters here. Now, that also brings this congregation of industry solution knowledge that gets disseminated from here when we are talking to our internal colleagues. And then from our customer standpoint, we do see that all our large customers, if not, I'd say all, a big part of them have their R&D and innovation labs here. Is they operate their sales offices out of Singapore. They also use Singapore as a landing kind of a country for the broader distribution or even adoption of innovation. And we see that quite a bit. Look at the likes of Unilever, P&G, everyone that I talk of, Heineken, all of SAP's large customers have some form of R&D and innovation labs. And we see that as a great opportunity to test and future-proof use cases here and look at how we could take that to scale as an implementation. And the third important thing is the ecosystem that Singapore presents. And this actually comes as a great package here, is the government, and starting with EDPI and to some extent SAP.io. They were part of the seed investment in SAP.io, and it's a great initiative government takes in SGInnovate, and also the ecosystem that is here and the state-owned enterprises that are willing to will help us future-proof some of these Horizon 3, or what we call as something where we can commercialize not in the short term, but in the mid to long term, which is in about 1.5 to 3 years. For SAP, short term is 3 months. We live in quarterly cycles, whether you can commercialize that. So that's where I guess the partnership with startups is very key, along with the institutions and the corporates that are here in Singapore. Let me give an example, and I think H3 Dynamics that was talked about in the keynote is one great example of how, in that short few minutes, Zeling took over. He took us through how H3 idea to becoming a H3 Dynamics. And we work, H3 Dynamics is also an SAP.io partner. They're also our SAP partner now, and we are working on several things to future-proof with them. One is we are looking at how do we work with them for linear asset inspection, like inspecting large pipes, dams, roads, tollways. And this is a great opportunity which expands our SAP's addressable market in asset management, which was very much limited to only a machine or a plant, something that is very tangible and is concentrated in one, where we are now looking at linear assets as another part of our digital supply chain, collaborating with several network of networks in terms of how you could do proactive inspection. The other thing that we are looking at from H3 Dynamics and future-proofing is look at how we can partner. SAP is also partnering with Singtel to pilot their 5G and how we could use edge computing to do proactive maintenance. And yeah, these are some of the scenarios a little different from what Frank has shared, where you require large processing data at the edge. And we're looking at H3, how they could work with SAP's edge computing and with Singtel's 5G, where we could look at how we could do inspection at the point instead of all the way sending back and proactive maintenance. That's one. We're also looking at piloting digital manufacturing cloud with 5G and Singtel. And here again, we are looking to working with partners like Micron, which again is a huge multinational having their R&D facilities here and also their manufacturing, to see how we could come up with these innovations inside the plant. So Singapore in that form, we help to future-proof the use cases, and it's great to work with startups here. And for a company like SAP, and we once determined this model of tripartite between a 5G, between a Singtel, SAP, and an H3 Dynamics, we can take this template across all the telecoms that most of them are SAP customers. We could take the same example to Europe, to North America, to Japan, to China, because they all use SAP and the business processes are the same, except that the workflows here and there could be a little bit of a nuances of that particular company. And that's where SAP.io sees Singapore as one of our very key major locations in Asia.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit more from the national perspective. And I appreciate the fact that SAP does view the government as being a key stakeholder in this. I think we remain such, and I'll do a call out to one of our ecosystem partners, A-Star. They are one of the big research institutions in Singapore, and they have a platform called the ARTC, which is the Advanced Remanufacturing Technology Center. And what they do is they work with corporates to address very, very specific problem statements. So, if they want to, optimize a production line, for instance, they would be the guys who go to build up a proof of concept or something. And ARTC will then match these problem statements with technology or groups of technologies to build out a solution for the corporate, whether it's Rolls-Royce or one of the big companies that are working in Singapore. And the good thing about them is that they source their technology not just from the universities and their own research labs, but also from startups. I believe that FireVisor is probably on the list of some of the technology providers that they source technology from. So there is this platform in Singapore that allows this marrying of startups together with the corporates. But then, of course, if you're looking at those a little bit more esoteric kinds of technologies that is more within the domain of SGInnovate, we have our own, reverse pitches for corporates that are looking at term and all that to reach out to the startup ecosystem that is rather small and more specific. And we also participate, or we run the local version or run the local edition of big global competitions like the Extreme Tech Challenge. I believe the finals will be a few days' time in Viva Tech as well, the big global finals. And we also do custom programs. But these are for technologies that are more, they're more emerging, that are not so well understood, and definitely not something that a corporate is willing to put a lot of money in at the moment. So I think roughly that is how some of the things that are going on in Singapore from our perspective.
Maybe I can add on to that.
We have more. You must speak at the same time. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, maybe I can add on to that. That EDB itself, it has a new ventures unit that works closely with large local enterprises as well as multinational companies in Singapore to create and scale new ventures beyond their core business. And New Ventures recently partnered with Schneider Electric to launch NaviX solutions, which helps companies to manage their critical power and cooling assets as a service. It also quite recently launched what they call a corporate venture launchpad. It's a pilot really to help established corporates launch their ventures quickly within 6 months, they say. And this is done in partnership with established venture studios like BCG, Digital Ventures, McKinsey, and so on. And from the EDBI's perspective, we work very closely with the companies we invest in, really to help bring them into Singapore and the Asia ecosystem. And we do have a very specialized value creation team set up just to do that.
Thanks, thanks, Paul. If we have the time, I wanted to quickly add on something. So yeah, I guess everyone covered on what we have in Singapore, which is incredible in the sense of going from 0 to 1 from a startup perspective. So, if you want to have a deep technology focused or heavy industry focused startup, Singapore is an incredible place in terms of the ecosystem. You have resources like SGI, EDB, SAP, who are enablers, and there are multiple programs being run to sort of take you from 0 to 1. But one of the things which I guess I could add in terms of what we could look more at is the fact that if you look at the Singaporean unicorns, let's say the big ones, the startups which went from 1 to 100 or 1000x and so forth, a lot of them are still heavily focused on customer side. So if we need, let's say, more of snowflakes from Singapore, the B2B, both the B2B sort of partnerships, channels, and investment perspective, it's growing. That's the natural cycle. So first in any ecosystem, the B2C startups are focused on more, and then people start to look more at B2B. But so in terms of Singapore, I think we are getting there where, even the B2B startups are coming up more and more. So, all of what we're talking about here, Industry 4.0, will come from B2B focused companies. So in terms of ecosystem, there's work happening to, bring up the next big B2B players, which can be really changing the industry in terms of Industry 4.0 enablement. That's happening, and we have to sort of keep working on it so that in the next 4 to 5 years we see big Singaporean B2B companies coming up and working and making a huge change in Industry 4.0. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Or if I may, just one. I'm not good in memory, so I always try to make it simple with some acronyms. So for me, Singapore is the 4 I's. It's international, multicultural. You got people coming from everywhere. You can commute everywhere. Innovation. You got government support, huge universities. I studied in Singapore and Fontainebleau in INSEAD myself. So you got investment, not only the corporate logo. There are a lot of corporations that have got center of excellence in Singapore, and there are, SAP, helping startups, and the influence. That's why influence in the region, in the Asia Pac, from Singapore, the rest of the region is following what Singapore is doing. There are other hubs, but this one is a key one. That's why we at Sigfox we choose to have our regional headquarter in Singapore, and the proof point of everything I'm saying, it's our partner. Unavis is our Sigfox operator in Singapore, very active, not only managing the network and selling our services, but also very active in the device, making devices for multiple use cases. And the influence part is they've been able to expand from Singapore into Taiwan, in Japan. They are doing business in Asia Pac, in Australia. So they are actually influential now everywhere in the region, and it's thanks to them started in Singapore. So I think it's a key country to influence the rest of Asia.
Thank you to all of you for sharing those ideas with us. It's widely believed that while most companies recognize the need to innovate and adopt Industry 4.0 practices, the inertia to change often stems either not knowing where to begin or being skeptic on the economic value from the change, effort versus outcome, or even fear of the large effort required to introduce change on multiple levels. So which statement do you believe is true, and what is your opinion on overcoming such as a mindset? Otherwise, what else do you think the resistance to change might be? SIRI, would you like to start maybe?
So yeah, I think one of the things which can help change the mindset. But okay, before mentioning that, I would like to mention that by and large, most of the companies we come across in Singapore and a lot of companies outside as well are very much there. So they're willing to sort of put in the resources, put in the manpower needed, put in the capital as well to make these changes happen. A lot of times where things get a little difficult is on ground implementation. So there are multiple parties sort of involved in these implementations, and sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it gets stuck because certain results are not seen in the time frame that it is expected. In those cases, the most important thing to remember is Industry 4.0 implementation is not will not be a one time or one project thing. It's an ongoing thing which companies have to keep in mind throughout. So let's say for us, every time we go to a company, we ourselves have made the process like after a lot of hit and trial, we made the process so smooth for them that it's really easy to onboard and sort of start seeing the first results very, very quickly, which sort of is incentivizing for these companies. So it's really important from both sides to sort of have the goal in mind. From the company side, it's really important to have this goal in mind that Industry 4.0 implementation is the final goal for them. And from the partners that they're working with or the startups or companies they're working with, they need to also sort of make the process so I wouldn't say seamless, but as easy as possible, such that the results are seen, at least preliminary results are, can be displayed faster. That has in fact helped us a lot in sort of, having many large companies work with us within a duration of 3 years. So I think both sides need to be mindful of the end goal and sort of work to make it as seamless as possible. I think focus is just the key point here, and that would be it.
Oh, I'll just add to that because I totally agree with you on that. Is when it comes to expectations, sometimes they are not aligned when they when a corporate works with a startup. One of the key challenges, and we have talked to a lot of these corporates at a higher level whenever we want to develop new technologies, and strategically they see the need for it. The CEOs, the boards, they see the need for Industry 4.0. They see the need for all these changes that need to take place to enable them to to keep pace with the market demands. But one of the things that sometimes they confidentially share with me is that they are less confident about the talent within their own organization being able to deliver on these structural changes that can really take people out of their comfort zone. And it is hard for them to bring in outsiders to come in and then try to weave it into a single working organization. Some of them have tried to do that. I think Singapore is great because Singapore is a test bed for a lot of these corporates to do it. But then these startups need to move from the POC stage to a commercial contract, and sometimes that's where the gap may be a little bit further for them to reach. I'm talking about very early stage companies here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if both Rabi and HS have touched on that, and when we are looking at our landscape of customers that we are working, because we are also in selling solutions to customers. Of course, they are across all the three pyramid, not knowing sometimes, feeling skeptical other times, or fear of a large effort. And let me just break it down into across these three. When we are looking at how innovations are, particularly in the context of startup innovations, we do have people who are starting from clean slate. It's always easy for them to plug and play because they're going modular and they can plug and play. And you see these kind of pilots and POCs with our startups happening less than 3 to 6 months, because it's just a plug and play. It could be, simple things like product insights and how a tea is consumed for Unilever in Singapore. It's just a plug and play because that's something they need to bring it to market in less than 3 months. And we're talking about digital supply chain. We are moving into a kind of a customer base where either they have to reimagine the art of possible as a part of their future digitization efforts, or they are looking at transforming their existing things to be more efficient or effective, or more flexible. So there are different kinds. Customers are going through different journeys of digitization, and that's where it's always challenging, as there is no one kind of a playbook when we are positioning startup solutions to our customers, even as a part of our own program and ecosystem. And the way SAP addresses that is when we look at solutions that we work with startups, we pretty much look at, okay, these are something which we know that we could go to a line of business owner who's, say, chief of manufacturing in a manufacturing plant, and we can give him bite-sized value creation. Like, okay, if you are looking at this machine vision startup solution, you're going to get quick value out of your quality inspections. So that's something like a very bite size. It's plug and play to whatever we are going to have now, and then he's going to have an additional value out of it. When we are looking to talking to large customers.
Yeah, sorry, Lalita, to interrupt you. We're running out of time here, so I'm afraid we have to proceed with the last maybe a question I have for you all. I'm so sorry for that, but so we're now coming to the end of our discussion. So if you can, let's say, maybe briefly tell you a bit more about and tell our audience, if you could just share with us one takeaway or advice on how startups and corporates can better collaborate with each other in the space of Industry 4.0. Very briefly, each of you, in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll probably finish that. And for us, it's use case. If you're solving a customer problem, you will be very, very much wanted by SAP, because if you solve one customer problem, we will take you to solve thousands of customers who are having similar problems.
Thank you.
And that's how we.
Maybe I'll take the next one. I guess the advice I would give is that startups have to be clear that there's a strategic buy-in and internal sponsorship of the corporates you look to partner with. Because the risk of a new trend is organizations may just react to peer pressure and rush into projects, right, without a clear understanding of business benefits. So the worst thing for a startup is to be an actor in the corporate's innovation theater, right, or a side project, and then get stuck in three discounted pilots with no logical conclusion, no path to scale. So it's good actually to really ascertain at the start if there's observable buy-in by the executives and whether there's appropriate resource commitment, and then to be decisive to cut off the engagement when there is not.
Thank you, Paul.
Or I would say on my side it's focus. Industry 4.0, it's the wide market. It's very complex, and it's very easy for any startup to get lost into many topics. So focus and cooperation with ecosystem.
Thank you, Frank.
Well, it looks like we lost them. Yeah, I'll just end that. So I think I'm just going to echo. Everyone has said some great stuff about it, and it's pretty much all there is to say. But one advice to give to a corporate that's looking to engage on Industry 4.0 with startups is that, one startup alone may not solve your whole problem. So you need to have some alignment in the expectations that startups generally solve a small sliver of probably a bigger problem, and there needs to be some effort, resources, commitment in time by the corporate to bring this to become a successful product or project. And from a startup perspective, don't expect that just because you solve a small part of the problem that this guy's going to roll out the red carpet for you. There's going to be a lot of work involved, and as Frank and the rest have mentioned, yes, you've got to know when to cut off and bail when the going is just getting too long and resources are getting a bit tight. In spite of the fact that we were working for a big, working with a big company. So that's probably all I have to say on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, HH. I think we've lost SIRI, but to our audience here, so I hope this panel discussion was useful. If you wish to continue the discussion and to address some more questions to our speakers, please stay online for the networking session. Thank you very much again to all of you, Frank, HH, Lalita, Paul, and SIRI for sharing all these key insights with us today. Thank you as well to the organizers, Singapore Economic Development Board, SGInnovate, and Singapore Global Network for giving me this opportunity. It was a real pleasure being with you today. And I will now pass the mic to Zilin. So thanks again to all of you and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Owen, and all our panelists who will be staying on for a couple of more minutes. So at the end of this session, there will be a networking that's going to start very shortly. So if you're looking for them, just look out for the time for you for a few minutes. Just a few shout outs. If you want to speak to EDB and you have questions about Singapore and Southeast Asia, you can go to our investment clinic platform. Live chat every Wednesday, and there's also bite-sized FAQ videos to help you to succeed and grow in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Likewise, if you are looking for visas and passes to make it easier for you to hire foreign talent and also for you to come to Singapore as a talent, there are some programs like Tech at SG and Tech at .pass from EDB, which will make it easier for you to start companies and investments and VCs in Singapore. Our partners from the Maritime Port Authority have also launched the Smart Port Challenge. So it's an innovation call for companies that want to find business and corporate partners in the maritime and shipping industry in Singapore. I'll drop all these links in the chat so you can definitely reach out if you have any questions. So there are a few organizations today. I won't go through all of them, but there is Singapore Global Network that helps you with networks. La French Tech, very important organization to help startups and VCs. Bpifrance, about their France Singapore program. If you want to set up in Singapore and you want some help, please talk to the French Chamber of Commerce. And SMRT is also here to look at startups in the mobility space as well. We also have the Smart Port Challenge organizers. IPI, which matches startups with corporate statements in Singapore. So if you find your first co-innovation partner, please go and look for them there. GIA, if you want to expand into Singapore or from Singapore overseas. And anything related to tourism is related to the Singapore Tourism Board. Industrial Estates, Green Industrial Estates, JTC, and looking to hire talent in Singapore and Southeast Asia, please go to the table with Greens, where we'll be very happy to support you. So we've come to the end of the panel session. We're going to open up very shortly